You're very welcome back to the 8th of our little reflections on different parts of the books of the New Testament that we've been having since the beginning of 2021. I want to look a little bit today at two letters attributed to St. Peter, 1 Peter and 2 Peter, as they're understandably called. We all have a good idea who St. Peter was. A fisherman from Galilee known as Simon, who had a radical change of career when Jesus said, "Come, follow me, I'll make you fishers of men." And Jesus then said, "You are Peter." Peter is the Latin, the Greek word for a rock. And in Aramaic, that was Kephas, the rock. So Kephas, the rock, probably was a nickname given to Simon. So we talk about Simon Peter or just Peter, but he really was Simon the rock, on whom Jesus said he wanted to build this church. He obviously was quite out of things when he got to Jerusalem. He was a country lad from much further north, not used to the life in the stick city. He's believed eventually to have gone to Rome and to have been martyred there about the middle of the year 60s years. Peter and leadership in the early church. Peter is mentioned in all four Gospels and mentioned by St. Paul as well in a number of his letters. He clearly was part of the inner circle of Jesus. The Gospels talk about Peter and the two sons of Zebedee, James and John. They were the ones who would have gone to the Transfiguration with them or gone to the Garden of Gethsemane. And we have that famous passage in the 16th chapter of St. Matthew's Gospel, "You are Peter, on this rock I'll build my church, and I'll give you the keys of the kingdom of heaven." I know that's been read in different ways down through history, but in the Catholic tradition there's been a long established belief that his successor as Bishop of the Church in Rome has been called the Pope. Looking at that picture there of St. Peter's Basilica, those of you who have been there will know, you can hardly see it on that slide, but on the left-hand side facing the Basilica down near the front of the steps, you have one statue of St. Peter, and over on the right-hand side you have one statue of St. Paul. Peter with the keys, I give you the keys of the kingdom, and Paul with this sword. Paul was the great proclaimer of the word, and we find in the letter to the Hebrews in chapter 4, the word of God is alive and active. It cuts more sharply than a two-edged sword. So Peter, the one who was given that leadership responsibility in the early church. So these two letters, attributed at least to Peter, they may have been written by Peter or by some associated with Peter or come from a school depending on Peter. Written to unidentified audiences. We have no idea quite who he was writing to, other than that one of them is directed very much to modern Turkey, but not to a particular local church, to give them encouragement in a time of crisis and pressure and persecution. The second letter is very much telling them to be aware of false teachers and to be prepared to wait and wait patiently for Christ's second coming. So what theology, what teaching do we get? What highlights do we get in these two letters? Well, the first letter of St. Peter, much of it, from the first chapter up to the fourth chapter, which is nearly all the letter, it seems to be, or has been suggested anyway, that it's a baptismal homily. It's a homily for those who have been baptized, born again in Jesus. So it contains a lot of reflections on the Christian life for those who have been reborn again of water and the Spirit. And there's also instructions in it to how to lead an early church, which suggests it was written to churches which were reasonably well established already. The second letter attributed to Peter at an early stage in chapter 1 talks about Peter having been there at the Transfiguration and seen the glory of Jesus. And it also assumes that some of St. Paul's writings have been well known. So when it comes to try to date these books when they were written, you can work out reasonably well how developed the early church was and how well St. Paul's writings were known. So for something to pray about this week, I leave you with this passage from the first letter of St. Peter, the first chapter, verses 8 and 9. Because we all walk in faith, not with confidence, not with complete proof that God exists. We walk as people of love and faith. Peter writes, "Although you have not seen him," not seen Jesus whom Peter saw, "you love him. And even though you do not see him now, you believe in him, and you rejoice with an indescribable and glorious joy, for you are receiving the outcome of your faith, the salvation of your souls. That's a good little summary of what the Christian faith means for us. The challenge of believing, but the hope in the eternal salvation, the salvation of our souls that keeps us going even when the going gets tough. Journey on in trust. God bless you.